So I want to start the conversation off really asking, what does a CRO really do? I think obviously in the room there's probably CROs, VPs of sales, and I think, quite often there is a lack of clarity between what a VP of sales is and what a CRO is. Warren, we'd love to start with you and kind of talking about, what really is a CRO?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe a bit of a trick question because most CROs run sales right now. But what a CRO really is most effective at and should be implemented as someone who oversees the entire revenue operation. That means they oversee all the sales and marketing and customer success motions. Essentially, a go-to-market leader who is responsible for breaking down silos and bringing revenue alignment across your sales, your marketing, and customer success organizations. And unfortunately, the definition of a chief revenue officer is very loose right now. There's not a great deal of precision. Allison and I were talking. It's almost like the CRO is like tofu. A lot of companies make it taste however they want, right? And I think that the issue, what's happening as a result of that is that revenue companies become very siloed, and it's difficult for them to align. And that's a much deeper problem than companies realize. So the answer to the question is CROs are revenue leaders that run the entire revenue operation.
So one thing that you said, I actually have a prediction that the title may evolve to like Chief Go-to-Market Officer in the future, because I talk a lot about go-to-market. I refer to my organization as go-to-market at Cloudinary. I agree with you. I have marketing, I have new logo, I have post sales, I have everything go-to-market, everything external.
Yep.
And I think the big difference between a head of sales and a CRO is really that. I think about the entire external experience of a prospect or customer from their, from soup to nuts. I don't just think about sales. And I think that is the key differentiator between a head of sales. And I think a big challenge is that there's a lot of people with a CRO title out there that were VPs of sales that wanted a fancier title, got it successfully, and that causes a lot of confusion and pain for everyone involved when that happens. And I think we'll talk about that later in the session.
Great.
I think obviously, we kind of identified it there that naturally it is a VP of sales, then kind of moving into a CRO. But what do we think kind of started this kind of ambiguously defined role? What was the root cause of it? And
I have some thoughts on this. The role is a young role.
Yeah.
It's about 15 years old, right? I think something like that. Which, when you think about the C-suite, it's a very new position. And I did a lot of research on this, and the first CROs were from around 2014 or so, maybe a little bit sooner than that. And basically, they were sales leaders who were really good at closing big partnership deals, who then were elevated to become executives to help bring larger cross-channel deals for organizations. Particularly, they were first hired by founders who were engineers, who didn't really have a great deal of commercial experience and needed somebody to come in and run the business. So what happened was the role is highly incentivized. It's a very financially rewarding role. So it attracts sales leaders. It can be. Yeah. Traditionally, if you're running a sales organization, it should be, right? Yeah. So it became, over time, the beacon of success for sales leaders to become chief revenue officers. And also, the recruiting organizations looked at people who had sales leadership to become chief revenue officers. So that skill set sort of became codified in the way the role is being looked at and viewed in the organization. I think the other thing, too, is that there's CMOs, right? And there are CSOs, customer officers. So there is also a way in which companies have architectured their leadership suite to keep siloed leaders in these C-suite positions, mainly for the purposes of having succession plans for people to gravitate up to C-suite executive roles. And it created, maybe unintentionally, a siloization of the way in which companies are being built today. That's the way I view it. Any thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
Yeah, so what we're having right now is a reckoning with the way companies traditionally look at how they populate their C-suites. And the issue pervasively has been, in a really strange way, the SaaS industry has accelerated and exposed the problems associated with this better because of the repeatable revenue component of it. It's easier to see how misalignment becomes a problem. So in a weird way, the repeatable, revenue model has sort of created an exacerbation of this issue. And I think we're seeing now, I evaluate chief revenue officer job descriptions on LinkedIn almost weekly to see how they're being described. And I'm seeing much more and more of them looking more like real true chief revenue officers than maybe even 3 or 4 years ago.
And the pain that it causes, excuse me, is what Warren and I were just talking about this. Like it's not that if you're really head of sales with CRO title that's bad or whatever, but it's really what happens is you have a misalignment in expectations and it causes a lot of pain, right? Because some CEOs and boards will say, we need a CRO. And then when you get into that, if you think of yourself as a certain type of CRO, then you get into that role, you may find that they really just wanted a VP of sales. And one of the telltale things is when Warren and I were discussing is you get into the role and you're a CRO and you're trying to build an architecture of the entire go-to-market suite and they're just like, I want to talk to you about this deal. And you're just like, but you probably, if you're a CRO, you probably have a VP of sales reporting to you, right? That's that person's job. I do not have encyclopedic knowledge about every single deal my team is doing, nor should I. I'm thinking a lot more, for example, about Q2 of FY25 than I'm thinking about Q3 FY24. And that's appropriate for what the type of CROing I'm doing. But if you're in the wrong, if you're working for someone who's a different perspective on what that CRO is, it just causes a lot of pain. I think the other thing is sometimes boards and CEOs will say, they're struggling, they're not hitting their numbers, things are not going well. We need a more senior person. We need a more grown-up person. So then we'll go to CRO. And it's really just what they really just want is they want someone different, they want new blood and maybe someone more senior, but they still actually want a VP of sales. And so like and I've experienced this firsthand and I've experienced a lot of pain with this. And that's kind of a big part of my talk track here is you need to understand if you want to be a CRO or if you are a CRO, what does that mean to you and what does it not mean? So that when you're having those conversations with CEO and boards, you can be very clear about what it is and what it isn't.